Why, thank you. Glad to accept.
I can never tell. Are you serious or not?
And you are certain that is everything that happened with her?
I don't have anything to hide.
I should give this girl a lesson in the dangers of crossing into a wolf's territory. But I have to say that I am very impressed with how well you have handled the situation.
Well, if you want a horse to run quickly, sometimes it's best just to let go of the reins for a while.
All right, then. What do your horse instincts tell you?
The clergy are trying to have a cathedra installed in their church so they can increase its influence.
A cathedra?
It's Latin for chair, but it represents the seat of a new diocese and requires that a bishop be elevated and seated upon it. And the church's influence extends to all the towns in its diocese as well.
I can understand why that fox of yours would be so eager to leave, since she's no longer going to be part of the growing power structure.
I'm still curious as to why she's no longer in their good graces. If I were in her place, I think I'd put up with it. The power that the church wields would make it worth it in the end.
Huh.
What's your take on it?
That almost sounds like you would like to know what I think.
Not really. It just helps me think to hear someone's voice. Particularly when I'm faced with a conundrum like this one.
You would not change your mind if I cried and begged, would you?
I'd have to ignore you. And you'd be waiting for me at the inn. We would make up after I came back successful. This one isn't up to you.
That will be more convincing when your face does not redden.
I'll work on it.
You are so energetic today. Men come into their own when they are on the heels of their prey. Only...
You'd like it more if you were being hunted.
Perfect marks. However, have you stopped to consider my fate should your deal not go exactly as planned?
You're acting as the collateral. If we fail, they'll sell you off to satisfy our debt.
And this is why your sleep has been so troubled as of late.
That's part of it.
If that happens, I hope they sell me off to someone who is not quite so dim.
Yes, those who can't repay the money they've borrowed are idiots. They deserve all the hardships that come.
Such boldness from the little boy who desperately begged me when I was trying to leave. I am helping you because I believe in you with all my heart.
Of course you do. Okay, it's time for us to go.
Really? You so enjoy letting your nerves have their way with you.
Well, if not in the privacy of my own room, when do I ever get to be myself?
When we first met, even up until recently, it always seemed to me like you were attempting to put on some kind of a show for me.
You know I'd never traveled with a woman before. You'd take some getting used to.
In the early days of our travels, even the thought of taking me in public would quicken your breath and make you nervous.
And if I started keeping the company of other women now, would it still make your tail bristle like before?
Men are onions, many layers, and all of them make you cry. In the end, you just end up exclaiming how it should not have turned out this way.
But isn't that the case with whomever once you allow them into your heart?
You are wasting your bait on a fish you have already caught. Now, why would you bother doing that?
I think caught belies the fact that this fish fought its way onto my boat despite my best efforts against it. It's not bait I should be giving you, but a bill for your enormous boarding fee. What's wrong?
Remember, you felt much differently when we first met. Come on, time to go.
Right.
I only dare to hold your hand like this because we have been through so much together on this journey. It is curious. Poets sing of changing things back to how they once were, but I am not sure it would suit me.
A woman like you might actually like it, but if things stayed that way for me, I'd end up collapsed dead from anxiety.
You worry too much. You will have me for your nurse when your end finally comes.
So, have you made your mind up about the plan yet?
I've done my share of due diligence. And my instincts tell me that what you say is true.
And?
However, one thing still concerns me.
What's that?
I don't know the conflict that caused you to part with the church.
Well, I guess that's reasonable enough. The Chancellor for the Church is in love with the idea of power. Not only is he trying to establish a cathedra out of this diocese, but he'd like it to be the metropolitan over the whole region.
An archbishop?
Exactly. While sniffing around for a lucrative business deal, I happened upon his network of backroom money transactions. He was siphoning off donations for use in his fur trade through a shell company he'd established before he was ordained. But he had gotten himself into financial trouble. So, I came along with a way to kill two birds with one stone.
Your trade in stone statues?
Correct. But we weren't just selling stone statues. I'm not just some merchant. I am Winfield nobility, after all. Through my family, I have a connection with the Cardinal who oversees political assignments.
So in return for using your connection with the Cardinal, the bishop agreed to sponsor your statue trade. You had a captive market in the church and all the support you could ask for.
The idea of the bishop moving up in the ranks made the low profit margins easier to cope with. But as his path to ascension became more secure, he began to sift the wheat from the chaff, as it were, cutting me off without so much as a farewell.
He came to his senses then. He realized you'd be a costly ally to keep.
I would have troubled him, to be sure. But no. Rather than train his own trader from within his circle, he chose to seek out an established company instead, and so I became obsolete. Just because I understand why he did it doesn't mean I have to like it.
I get it. So your stock of statues had become harder to sell overnight. And waiting around for another expedition to the north was just not an option. I see it clearly. Let's set up a meeting to discuss the details of the plan.
It'll be my pleasure.
Your fox's hands were shaking, were they not?
Nerves can get even the best of merchants, I suppose.
Let us hope that is all it was.
Sorry to keep you waiting. Let's go. We should get about 1,500 silver coins for you.
Next episode, Wolf and the Decision to Part.
Next episode, Wolf and the Decision to Part.